Great things begin in the periphery. Meanwhile, my father works third shift at the mustard plant. He's around my age. He's finished for the night. He revs his truck, waiting for the heat. The ladder shakes in its rack on top. The heat is dusty coming on. All this can happen without us, just out of view. It's almost morning. The smallest tools begin to shudder now in their boxes. So taking a comfortable seat, feet flat, your hands facing upward on your lap, receptive. And letting the silt, all of the dust, thoughts, emotions, worries, concerns, just for the next half an hour, just as an experiment, just setting the glass very still on the table and watching all of that detritus just settle to the bottom. Nisargadatta says that nothing wrong with having thoughts. You could have 100 thoughts, 1,000 thoughts sitting in meditation, but they're none of your business. And just feeling them settle. Your breaths become deeper. There's more room in there. To the count of 4, breathing in, a little pause at the top, and breathing out to the count of 5. Relaxing all the muscles in your face, around the eyes, around the jaw, the back of the neck. Straightening the neck just a little. Straightening the back as best you can, just by a millimeter. Letting the shoulders fall and relax. 'And feeling the action of that one organ, which is the heart and the head, as you breathe in and breathing out. The drawbridge of the heart comes down and you're opening the doors. 2 more breaths. Now just softening the belly, where we put all of our defenses. Feeling your feet touching the foundation as the room begins to widen and the space widens within you. And you begin to get a sense of that sky mind that Pema Chodron talks about. Since today is about right livelihood, you might, as you breathe, dedicate your practice to somebody who's working in the periphery, somebody who's doing their work where no one can see it. Breathing in, I dedicate this work to those who are laboring without any rewards. Breathing out, I commit myself to doing no harm in my own work. Harmlessness does not make headlines, but as we put our feelers out, you can sense all of the people working to do no harm within your circle and in the wider world. Breathing in, I dedicate this practice to those who labor in anonymity. Breathing out, I commit myself to doing no harm in my own work. Side work. Great things begin in the periphery. Meanwhile, my father works third shift at the mustard plant. He's around my age. He's finished for the night. He revs his truck, waiting for the heat. The ladder shakes in its rack on top. The heat is dusty coming on. All this can happen without us, just out of view. It's almost morning. The smallest tools begin to shudder now in their boxes. I chose my own poem because after searching for work poems for a while, I couldn't find any that weren't despairing or any that took sides. And I thought of something that Rilke once said to his wife in a letter from Paris. He wrote, I guess it was around 1907. looking at the Van Goghs for the first time, looking at a portfolio of Van Gogh's work. He was stunned by the figures in the work and said to Clara that what's amazing here is that he takes no sides. And he says to her, he shows us nothing. He has it. And what he means by he has it is that he's not casting an opinion upon the workers in the fields. He's not making them look strong in a propagandistic way, and he's not making them look weak and victimized as well. He's just showing them as they are. And that's what I hope to do in this poem. I wanted to create an illustration of my father in a year that I was alive, but in which I didn't know the kind of work that he was doing in the third shift between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Yet he's there. He's doing that work somewhere. And it's all in the periphery. It's all happening out of view. And yet somehow I'm sitting here because of that work that I never knew really anything about. So there's a poem about this, the sacrifices that others make for us, which we're completely ignorant of, and yet which kind of hold up the world. It seems to me that in that sense, side work is the holiest work that we can do, the work that nobody sees, that nobody acknowledges, that nobody even knows about. It's also a third shift kind of poem because it's happening during dream time. It's happening during the time of creative incubation while I'm asleep. So in the poem, there's a lot of references to holy texts. You probably saw some of them. There's the mustard seed, of course, and there's Jacob's ladder, and there's the heat, the dust from the heat coming on, which is a little bit like the whirlwind talking to Job. And the tools at the end are these little Adams and Eves coming to life, which are also the words in the tiny boxes of the tercets, and also what poems are and what ideas are at night when we wake up fresh and realize that our brain has been doing its own side work while we've been sleeping. So the question I wanted to bring in today for Right Livelihood is what is the side work of our own lives that nobody sees and that we ourselves might not even consider to be work at all? So Right Livelihood is the fifth spoke in the Eightfold Path, and it's the last of the second group. The first group you might remember was Panna, which means wisdom, and that involves right view and right thought, which is basically a foundation in the teachings and an alignment with understanding what's real, with making contact with the real world. And then Sila is the second grouping. And that means ethical context is how we take that foundation and apply it to our interactions in the phenomenal world. And of course, that involved right speech and right action, and now right livelihood. It's actually something very specific, right livelihood. It's doing no harm, um, creating no poison. Don't poison the environment in your work. Don't kill sentient beings. Don't steal. Don't exploit others. Don't make intoxicants. And as I was thinking about this rule, I realized it might be the most difficult one because there's no way that any of our livelihoods don't touch some kind of poison in this world. All of those poisons are so interconnected that the moment that you take a step into the world, you're already participating somehow in the destructiveness. And this is what the good place taught. It's really impossible to live the good life because everything is so interdependent. And at the same time, I thought, if that's true, is there a way that we can do the least harm? If not do no harm, how can we How can we at least participate in this world in a way that does the least harm? I thought of something that my friend Sibilla said to me just yesterday. She was citing a study that Princeton did on starlings. And some of you might know about this, which posed the question, how do starlings not bump into each other when they suddenly make the choice to fly from the ground to a tree or to the sky? And it was it was determined by this study that every starling is aware of seven other starlings around it. And that group of seven makes a choice which is interconnected to the other groups. And so what looks like an instantaneous decision is actually a web of connectedness. There's a book by E.F. Schumacher, which is one of my favorite books of all time. It's called Small is Beautiful. It came out in the 1970s. And interestingly, he says something similar. He was talking about how in businesses that have more than 1,000 employees, the moral center of those businesses begin to fail because the employer no longer knows their own employees. So he made the point that it was important to keep businesses in any way that you can as small as possible, or to group them into small compartments so that this moral center could be maintained. And I thought, who are the seven other starlings around me at my own work? And I immediately knew who they were. And I felt that just by identifying them. And interestingly, there are people who do work in anonymity in the periphery and who don't get a lot of credit for that work. But I realized that by identifying who they were, I knew my calling at my job, which can sometimes be very, very difficult. This is our work in the periphery. This is really the heart of right livelihood. This is what E.F. Schumacher says. All the really important innovations and changes normally start from tiny minorities of people who use their creative freedom for good. All the really important innovations and changes normally start from tiny minorities of people who use their creative freedom for good. Here's the poem again. Great things begin in the periphery. Meanwhile, my father works third shift at the mustard plant. He's around my age. He's finished for the night. He revs his truck, waiting for the heat. The ladder shakes in its rack on top. The heat is dusty, coming on. All this can happen without us, just out of view. It's almost morning. The smallest tools begin to shudder now in their boxes. So getting back into that comfortable position with your back slightly straightened, your neck lengthened. Feeling your heart and your head meeting as one organ, and breathing into the count of 4. with a pause at the top. And breathing out to the count of 5. Just for the next 7 breaths, see if you can identify the other starlings in your group. It doesn't have to be a work group. It can be a community group. It can be a poetry group. The people who you align with to touch on those higher levels. This is what Parker Palmer says from a book called Let Your Life Speak. Self-care is never a selfish act. It's simply good stewardship of the only gift I have, the gift I was put on earth to offer others. Anytime we can listen to true self, we do it not only for ourselves, but for the many others whose lives we touch. In a way, the work that we're doing in the periphery for the other starlings around us is self-care at a difficult time. Keeping from the edge of overwhelm however we can. And as you're breathing, watching the silt fall and rest, no matter how long it takes, or if at all, it's none of your business. Maintaining that alignment. Here's Schumacher again. How could we even begin to disarm greed and envy? Perhaps by being much less greedy and envious ourselves. Perhaps by resisting the temptation of letting our luxuries become needs. And perhaps by even scrutinizing our needs to see if they cannot be simplified and reduced. Staying with the breath, hold your awareness at the center of your forehead. Stand back from everything that you could possibly lose, the body and the mind and emotions, identity, titles, houses, possessions. Just stand back from all of that and look from that vantage point. Just as an experiment for a minute or two. Soften the shoulders. And you find that you're looking from the point from which that still small voice speaks to you and says things that are true. Parker says in Let Your Life Speak, this very famous line, it's before I can tell my life what I want to do with it, I must listen to my life telling me who I am. That's right livelihood. Side work. Great things begin in the periphery. Meanwhile, my father works third shift at the mustard plant. He's around my age. He's finished for the night. He revs his truck, waiting for the heat. The ladder shakes in its rack on top. The heat is dusty coming on. All this can happen without us, just out of view. It's almost morning. The smallest tools begin to shudder now in their boxes.